Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming and to listen to our illustrious panel this evening. I'm so pleased to see this much interest. I wanted to let you know that you are being recorded. The panel is being recorded, and it will be on our Facebook page and on our website. And before we begin, I just wanted to thank Marika, who is a member of our team, but she is also the founder of Blue Point Public Relations, Sarnia Lambton's only boutique PR firm. Marika is also a member of the Gene Collective Advisory Committee. She is passionate about empowering women and is a fierce advocate for equity. We're very pleased to have Marika, to facilitate for us this evening. And before I hand the program over to Marika, I just wanted to thank Tracy Kingston and Marie Gillis and Judy Krall for joining us this evening. We're so thankful for your support, your knowledge, and we hope that this will inspire other women to follow in your footsteps. Marika, over to you.
Thank you so much, Helen. Welcome everyone to the first in our panel series. At our core, the Gene Collective is about inspiring and empowering women, and we're happy to welcome some of our local women with us tonight. I'd also like to welcome local media who are here. Thank you so much for taking an interest. It's really, it's very inspiring to know that you're finding this as inspiring as we do. Just a quick note about our structure for tonight. I have some planned questions ahead of time, and I'll be leading the panel through those. At the end, we will have an opportunity for our viewers, our audience, to ask questions. So if you do have any questions for our three panelists, please enter them in the chat in Zoom, and we will get to as many as we can before the end of our time. And we will also make sure that we get those answered for you outside of the time as well. We'll send them out again in a follow-up email if needed. So make sure to keep your questions positive and focused on learning from our panelists' experience, because that's what we're all here for. And once we're sort of through all the questions, we're going to do a little bit of networking. So everyone will have an opportunity to introduce themselves and chat a little bit about why they're here. So welcome to all of our audience members tonight. So I want to just have a quick moment to introduce our panel. Welcome Anne-Marie Gillis. Anne-Marie has held public office for 18 years, first starting as a school board trustee, and then was elected as city councillor for the city of Sarnia, and then county council representative for Sarnia, deputy warden as well for the county of Lambton. So welcome, Anne-Marie. Welcome also to Judy. Judy began her career in politics, serving also as a school board trustee, and the following term was elected to Enniskillen Township Council and is currently in her second term there, and Judy is now deputy mayor. Welcome also to Tracy Kingston. Tracy has been an active member of her community and is currently serving in her second term as councillor for St. Clair Township. Welcome everyone. So we're going to start off with our first question. Anne-Marie, I'll direct that to you first. What made you decide to run for office?
Well, thank you, Marika, for the question. Thank you, Helen, for hosting and creating the Gene Collective and bringing this to a wider audience. We really need to have more women in office. And the reason, basically, that I got involved in politics was because I'm a child of the 60s, and I always had a great interest in government. And for those of you who are of a certain age, shall we say, during my formidable years growing up, we witnessed the assassination of presidents, assassinations of senators, assassinations of public leaders during the 60s, the threat of nuclear war, and the civil rights movement. That was a very, very busy time in the life of the world. And as a child growing up in those years, we certainly were made aware of what was happening. And I think that that's happening again today. So fast forward that to the 80s, when I was a parent, and had children in the school system. One of the things that we noticed, my husband and I, was the fact that their technology was taking a pivotal role in industry and in the workforce, but it wasn't especially prominent in the schools. And we knew that our children were going to be facing technology to the extent that we see it today. We saw that vision, and we were with a group of other parents and educators that also saw that vision and knew that we had to do something. So I participated in a study in a pilot project called Tradition, Technology, and Change. And that particular pilot project brought about desktop computers into the classroom and into what we modeled as a lab, into a school that was traditionally based, so that the teachers had traditional curriculum. And we wanted to see if we could transition them into teaching using this technology. And we did. And it was very, very successful. And we had the opportunity to present that to government, model it, and show that this could be a success. And it ended up being one of the pivotal programs that the NDP government at the time introduced to the educational system. So I got a chance to see firsthand what one person who had no profile, no political background, but just had a keen interest and an advocacy role of wanting to bring the best to a school system for children and prepare them for the next generation, which we did. And that was basically my beginning sojourn into politics. And the rest is history.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Tracy, why did you decide to run for office?
I think it was mainly because I just wanted to get a little more involved in the community. I had been involved with the Optimist Club for a number of years, been the president, vice president, and gone through kind of the ranks that way. We've also been a small business owner for, well, I've been since 2008. We've been involved in small business in Corunna since 1976. So I could see that there was a lot of things that little more improvement needed, beautification, that kind of thing. So I wanted to see if I could help more that way. And just basically to help improve the daily lives of the citizens. Wanted to set an example for my children, as much as they just kind of giggle over that that's not really why you did it, Mom, but I kind of, in a way, I did it on a whim. I just wanted to see how the process worked and wanted basically to get more involved with my community. And I found this little quote the other day, and I thought it kind of summed it up why people should get involved in government, more or less municipal government, because that is the easiest way to get things done. So this is the quote I came up with: "There is no greater way to create meaningful change and to make communities stronger for the future than through local government." So I just thought it's a good way to get your 2 cents worth in there. You don't have the power a lot of people think that you have, but at least you can get in and offer suggestions and just help keep things on track. So I just wanted to get more involved in my community, more personal development. I had done a lot of different things in the past. So this was just kind of the next step in personal development, really.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah, thank you.
Judy, off to you. What made you decide to run for office?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me this evening. What made me run for office is I was very involved with my children when they were in public school. I was president of the Home and School Association. I chaired school council in the public school and in high school. I also was regional chair for school councils as they evolved here for Lambton, Kent. And I had a former mayor from the town of Petrolia that had watched me basically come up rank and file and said, "Had you thought about running for school board trustee?" And that's how it all started for me. I made my run for school board trustee, served a term there. And by that time, my youngest son had completed high school. And I was encouraged by the current mayor here in Enniskillen to run here for Enniskillen Township Council, and the rest is history.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that all three of you could join us tonight. We kind of have representation from all over. We've got Anne-Marie, who did city, and we've got Judy out in the country, and then Tracy out in a small community downriver, which is wonderful. Tracy, I'll ask you this question first. Our next question is, what do you think is the biggest challenge that's faced by women in municipal office, and how can women overcome that challenge?
Depending on your age group, I think if you're in a younger age category where you're working full-time, you've got family, you've got a lot of personal commitments, it's a little tricky to fit it all in. However, if it's something that you really want to do, you'll fit it into your schedule, because it is a lot of work. There's a number of meetings per month. There's a lot of reading, a lot of background information that you've got to learn before you get to your meeting, the agenda, that kind of thing. And it's just, I think a lot of it's the time commitment. Some of it's also a fear of getting involved. You're maybe a little more intimidated. You may also be afraid of criticism, personal attacks, that kind of thing. But those things you gotta have to put aside and kind of focus and put on the blinders, and that's all kind of in the background. There's a lot of false assumptions about holding a position in office, and until you really get involved, there's a lot of things that you have no idea how the process works. But once you get the hang of it, it is you go with the flow and you learn a lot. Sometimes there's a lack of support from your family as well. I mean, not in my case. My husband just said, oh, you're running for office? Okay. So that worked out. But I think it's just fitting it into your schedule as well, the time, the commitment, that some people just don't have the time. And that's what I find, that you see a lot of people that are more retired on council, because they have the time to do it, because it is a huge time commitment as well. You've got regular meetings to go to, you're put on different committees, it's the reading ahead of time, and there's social events as well, and not just social events to go out and have fun, it's networking and learning what else is going on in the community. So I think the biggest challenge is fitting it into someone's schedule and the time commitment, but you can make it work, certainly.
And you mentioned something about false assumptions. Can you speak a little bit more to one maybe that stands out to you that people assume before they successfully get into office?
I think people think it's difficult. It's really not difficult to sit and listen to people. And yes, you form your own opinions, but I think it's people thinking it's really harder than it is, and it's truly not. Because if you're interested, you're compassionate about your community, you'll find you're going to fit in well with the process for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tracy. Judy, what do you think is the biggest challenge faced by women in municipal office, and how can they overcome these challenges?
Well, for me, living in the rural area and my township being all rural, myself personally, the hardest challenge is getting the respect of the male gender. I know from working in the farming industry, that was the biggest hurdle for me, was getting the respect of males. There's still a bit of a stigmatism there yet, I believe, that they still see the role of a person on council more male than female. So it's being able to earn that respect and get past that. And it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time. So for me, getting that respect thing is I volunteer a lot in the community. And so it's that putting that name to face that really helps. And I'm a good advocate. I'd like to think I'm a good advocate for issues. And so people see me for that, and hopefully that kind of helps get that respect within the community. That is the biggest challenge I think farming women have, particularly with the older generation, or the wisdom, as I like to refer to them to.
That's wonderful insight. Thank you so much, Judy, for that. I think volunteering is a really great way, like you said, to get your face to the name and get that recognition and respect from the people in the community. That's a great suggestion. Anne-Marie, off to you. What do you think is the biggest challenge faced by women in municipal office, and how can they achieve these or overcome these challenges?
Well, my two colleagues have touched pretty much on just about everything that I would classify as challenges. But something that is pivotal, I think, when you are considering running for office is you need to educate yourself. And Tracy touched a little bit on this in some respects. And when I say educate yourself, it's not just on the position that you want to run for, but what does that entail? Tracy mentioned, the age of a lot of people who run for office. When I ran for office as a school board trustee, I was in my early 40s and my youngest child was 8. I was going from a board office that was in the city where I lived to a board office that had yet to be determined because we went to regional government. As a result, I ended up traveling back and forth to Chatham, Kent, and Wallaceburg probably 2 to 3 times a week. The particular time frame of the actual meetings took about 4 to 5 hours. So you're traveling, you're leaving home around 4 o'clock, just as the buses are coming in. You're saying goodbye to the family, putting supper on the table, driving down the Kimball side road, which is what we do here, to get to Wallaceburg and to get to Chatham, Kent. It's an hour and 15 minutes approximately if you get the traffic just right. And then you turn around at midnight and you're driving back the same way down those country roads. So to know that in advance is good, because that way you can determine, do I have this kind of time to commit to something of this magnitude? Now that was me back then. Of course, now we have Zoom meetings, which at the time was not allowed. There was computers and communication of computers for this particular type of venue was unheard of. There was no Skype, there was no FaceTime, there was none of that. So it was, you either call on the telephone and say, I can't make it because there's a blizzard, or I'll be there. And that kind of thing you need to understand when you're getting into politics of this nature. And it hasn't changed that much. It's the time commitment. But also, as I said before, you need to yourself on what exactly is this role that you want to take on. And Tracy again touched on it, and so did Judy. And by the way, it's not Blair, it's Anne-Marie. Blair is my tech supporter and my partner in crime for 45 years, but that's another story. Speaking about the time commitment and the education, how do you educate yourself to the world of advocacy and the world of politics, which again is just basically the activities of government. And from a personal perspective of the people that are listening, it helps if you are involved in different ways within your workplace or in various social activities or community volunteerism that you do. So if you are looking to advance yourself in various ways, you need to get on committees to learn the structure of what a committee does, what it means to chair a meeting, what it means to sit in a meeting and participate in an active way instead of, like I always used to do, and still do, is jump in and say, oh, I have an idea, you really, really need to know this. You need to learn the structure so that you can be a true participant, not just listen to me because I'm the best thing since sliced bread and aren't you glad that I'm here? No, but you are an elected official. You do deserve and expect a certain amount of respect from the people that you're sitting around the table with. But you also have to know what your role is in all of that. And the way that you can learn that and overcome those challenges is what I was speaking about. Learning at your grassroots, either through work or community services or committees of council or committees at the trustee level, which I served as well. So you understand what you're getting. So educate yourself, educate yourself, educate yourself.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. It's so important, and we have you know, the Gene Collective has some things in the works, hopefully, to help women in the community, you know, reach those educational goals for their political aspirations. So, Judy, I'll start with you this time. What words of encouragement and inspiration would you give to women thinking of running for office?
The best words that I could give for women running for office is, you know what, don't be afraid to put your name out there, give it a try, because you know what, even if you're not successful, the whole process, it's a great learning experience. Just being able to put your name out there, interact with people, learn about your community, it really does broaden your horizons. So, you know, you always hope that things are going to go well, and you wish that of everyone. But even if it doesn't go well, you know what? You've taken the time to learn more about your community, and you'll be a better person for it. You'll certainly understand the political issues when you read about them, whether it's on social media or paper. You'll understand a lot better where some of the decisions are coming from that impact you and your community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anne-Marie, what kind of words of encouragement and inspiration can you provide to our audience members tonight?
Well, a couple of things I would say is that coming back to the education process and learning about wonderful things that we're doing this evening through the Gene Collective, to have women supporting other women is truly a wonderful thing, a great initiative. I certainly had some coming into politics and during my political career. And I certainly appreciated the fact that there were people there to support you. There were people to educate you through the campaign process, educate you on how to raise money, educate you on how to create a profile, which people, if you're not known in your community, you're starting at the grassroots level to create a profile, because your friends and family know how wonderful you are, but the rest of the world doesn't. Mm-hmm. And you need to get out of your comfort level if you want to get engaged in activities of government so that you can communicate effectively to people. And that's another thing that I would say from a words of wisdom perspective. You need to be able to get your message to people so they understand what you're trying to say and what you're trying to do. The other thing I would suggest, and similar to what Judy has said, and Tracy touched on it before, is we have all been advocates at one time or another in our lives. Mm-hmm. And that in itself shows you how to push your ideas and get people on board of what you are trying to do. And politics is all about change. It's all about doing good things. And sometimes we lose that in the whole mechanizations of politics. But that's what I would say. Again, as Judy said, have faith in yourself, but also have faith in others, because they will help you get you where you want to be and where you think you can do the best work.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Tracy, how about you? What kind of words of encouragement can you offer?
Very similar to what Anne and Judy have said. Just remember that it takes, the process is sometimes a little bit slow. Make sure that you take, your first term basically is more of a learning term. So don't be afraid that you're not making any kind of contributions, that you're not getting anything done, because it truly does take a long time in a lot of the processes, a lot of hoops to jump through. First thing I wanted to do when I got on council is, it seems really trivial, but I wanted some new entry signs to Corunna. So I'm like, oh great, we got this idea, we got it in the budget. Yesterday they finally went up. So that's 5 years, over 5 years. And it's very simple, but there's a process to everything. So don't be discouraged that you can't just jump in and have great ideas. Like Anne-Marie said, yeah, I've got this great idea. You just have to go in slowly and go with the process. You also have to make sure that you're open to conflict, open to other opinions. Mm-hmm. You don't want to remain silent, but then you don't want to be pushing a lot of buttons either. So you've got to you know, kind of go with the flow for a little while. And yeah, just be open, accepting, make sure you ask for help when you need it. Read all you can, like Anne-Marie said, get educated. Attend some of the council meetings, see how things run. There are also, a lot of people don't realize the city and the municipalities have committees that citizens can belong to as well. That things like that help with the park, the arenas, that kind of thing. So that's another way to get involved and just see how the process works. Meet a lot of people, and yeah, just be open and willing to help, and you know, willing to go along with other people's ideas as well. But that's another big thing. It can't all be about you, because it's a democratic process, and it does take a little bit of time, and you've got to work with others as well.
Thank you so much. I think that's really insightful. You know, persistence is key. Pick your battles. You slow and steady. Those are all really great suggestions, and ones that we will definitely, you know, keep close to us. I think those are good everyday suggestions too, right? They're good for running our own daily lives. So just a reminder to everyone that if you'd like to ask our panelists any questions, you can enter them into the Zoom chat. My next question, I will start with you, Tracy, actually. And I know this is a question that came from Helen when we had a brief meeting last week, but can you tell us if there are any differences between men and women when it comes to community development?
I think the biggest thing, and I noticed that with myself and our other female counselor that's on board as well, is we look at the community a little bit differently. A lot of times the men want to get infrastructure, technical things done. We're more about, I shouldn't say beautification, but making things more comfortable for people, accessible, that kind of thing. And to keep our image up as well, to make sure everything's professional looking, clean, that sort of thing. So it's more making people, I shouldn't say comfortable, but making things attractive and comfortable, as well as making sure that they're secure and fixed properly as well.
I think that's very important to think about, right? When you're in council meetings, to know that we maybe think differently than our male colleagues. Yeah. Anne-Marie, do you have any insight to provide to that as well?
Well, I would disagree a little bit with what Tracy has said in one respect. I know when I came on council, and certainly on the school board as well, infrastructure. And it's not just holes in the ground and the lights staying on. It also has to do with the environment and your green space. And that touches back a little bit to what Tracy was saying. So with regard to perspective of men versus women on council, it kind of depends on your background and what strengths you bring to the table. It doesn't really matter whether you're a male or female. But women have a different perspective when it comes to listening, and certainly from more of a collaborative style of, rather than more men like a hard and fast yes or no, whereas women usually look at the shades of gray, look at the unintended consequences of the decisions that you're making. But we all come to the table with our strengths, not usually gender specific, but just because of our experiences, our life experiences. And that in itself changes the dynamic if you can listen. If you come to the table and you are not a willing listener, then it doesn't matter what presentations people make to you while you're a counselor, your mind is made up and there you are. But women, I find, when they come into council, they don't come in with their minds made up. They haven't lobbied each other in the background. They've discussed issues, but they haven't made a definitive decision. And I find that in itself is one of the defining differences.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Judy, do you have any additional points to make about the difference between male and female counselors?
Well, I'm going to agree with Tracy and Anne-Marie. I feel personally that women do take the time to listen and listen to what everyone has to say collectively before they come down and make a decision. But I tend to find that women are more worried about the health and well-being of the community, whether it is in infrastructure, beautification. It's that overall thing. I tend to find that women worry more about quality of life and what kind of life their residents have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. My next question is about the election process, the campaign, sort of the lead up to the election. What kind of thoughts or insight or suggestions can you offer to women who are nervous about that campaigning process? Anne-Marie, I'll start with you.
Well, you have the right to be nervous because you are putting yourself out there. I always found that it was very difficult to drive around town and see your name plastered everywhere. Being a person who is not someone who's used to being out in the limelight prior to my political career, I found that really tough. I found it really hard on my family. I found it particularly difficult when people were taking my husband's last name in vain, that kind of thing. But once you make the commitment, you have to realize that this is the reality. You are going to see your face everywhere. The other thing that I would say to women or anyone who wants to run into in public office, again, it comes back to know who your supporters are, know what your strengths are, and build to those strengths. If you're a good communicator, then utilize that skill. If you're not a good communicator, do some homework, learn the role, educate yourself. Again, as I've said before. But yes, the other thing, of course, depending on what you're doing, it may be some expenditure of funds. You'll have to go out and get people who will actively campaign on your behalf. And that's another setback for a lot of people. Women particularly are bad for that, I find, because we feel we can do it all. Like we're super moms. We're Wonder Woman. We can work, we can, bring home the bacon, we can do it all. So we don't necessarily ask for help, but you need to ask for help. You need to have a good team of support behind you. And it has to be, I think, a little bit more than your family, because your family love you. Doesn't matter what you do. You're great. But you need to have people out there who are objective critics, and they can say, oh, you need that. And you have to be willing, again, to listen to that constructive criticism, because you will be a better politician.
Thank you so much. I think that's really important to share. And I think it's really important for all of us to kind of keep in mind that asking for help is okay. As I think you touched on that, we not only are we expected to kind of like juggle all of the balls at the same time, but we expect that of ourselves. So I think reminding people, not just that we're here to help, but it's okay to ask for help is really important. Judy, I saw you nodding a lot during that. Can you provide any suggestions or insight into how sort of to get through that elections process?
The elections process can be tough. I know for me, I used social media. I used Facebook as a school board trustee, and I used it when I ran for council. That for me, stepping into that environment, that can be very nervous, because you know what, there's lots of, I guess I watch too, not just myself, but I watch other politicians too that have stepped into that social media. And I mean, you're opening yourself up to everything. So you have to be very willing to, again, listen, read everybody's comments, and make your judgments accordingly. Like it's that, to me, going into Twitter, Facebook, those are game changers when you're using social media to get your message out.
And I think that's a really important point. As somebody who works in PR, my big suggestion that I make to anyone who is either in elections or not, if you are opening a business page or a Facebook page to promote yourself or your interests, you have to be prepared to moderate it. So I'm glad that you touched on that, because you see things on social media become viral when you're not responding appropriately, or if you're not responding at all. So you always have to make sure you're prepared to put the time in to adequately moderate that platform. So I'm really glad you mentioned that, Judy. It's very important. Tracy, how about you?
First of all, be organized and have a plan. And yeah, and to touch on the social media, follow through, make sure you follow through. And one of the, I saw somebody's question pop up, who do you ask for help? Well, when I first started to get the idea to run for council, our mayor actually took me on a tour of the township, and Mayor Arnold was great in support. So having somebody on your side like that, and whether they support you or vote for you or not, at least they gave you a bit of the background. The clerk at your township office should have some resources. Find resources, municipal world. There's lots of different municipal products out there that you can research. And even former council members, former people that have run in the past, that's a good resource as well. And being creative with your promotional material as well. Touching on all, depending on the age group that you want to get involved as well. That'll make a difference on how you campaign. There was a young lady that campaigned the last election. She did not put one sign or one flyer out, and she did very well as far as getting votes, I think. And what was my last thing? Oh, now I can't remember what I was going to say.
If it comes up, just mention it. But I think it is important that knowing your audience, right? And again, like me with my PR brain, but knowing your audience is really important. Yes, Tracy.
Oh, I know. Knocking door to door, as much as that's uncomfortable, that's probably one of the best ways to get votes. And the last two elections, I did the whole town of Brigden. Excuse me, except for one street. I knocked on every single door, and I think people were really impressed with that. And I don't think I got one negative person out of it. Even if they're like, oh, I'm not interested here, here's a postcard. Oh, and here's a tip I did, and people really, if you're giving out brochures and things, put something that's memorable on it. Both the times I ran, I put a recipe on the back of my card, and people keep that card and keep that on their fridge. Whether they ever make the recipe is hard to say, but be creative with your promotional material as well.
That's a really great suggestion, and I think that I love that idea with the recipe on the back. That's wonderful. It does encourage people to keep your products or your papers, right, instead of just throwing them in the bin. That's great. We do have a question from our audience member, Gail. She is asking, do you think that women are expected to behave differently or are judged differently for their behavior? Judy, I'll start with you.
Boy, Gail, that's a good question. Are women judged differently? I believe they are judged differently. And I think that's a part of being a female, being the one that's the mom, the go get 'em, that's out in the community. I do think that we get judged differently and we get looked at differently. Yeah, that's probably the best thing I can say to that answer is yes, I do feel that we do. It's not the same as, I don't believe we're looked at the same as people look at males, at least out here. At least I can honestly say that out here in the rural area.
Tracy, how about you?
I agree with Judy. Kind of in society in general, we're looked at slightly differently just because of our different skills and what we bring to the table. But just to mention that in my terms of council, not once was I ever looked at differently from anyone else. Never criticized, never put down, never made fun of. And sometimes if you're in a room with 17 other men and it's just you, never once was I made uncomfortable as well. So it's, I think, gaining respect, whether people look at you differently or not. Once they respect you and know what your contributions can be, and if you're respectful back, that makes a huge difference. Basically, you get what you give. So
Marika, I 100% agree with that. The respect thing, from start to finish is the most important aspect, I feel, to this job, is earning that respect.
I think that's a theme that's kind of been present all through tonight. And I think it's really important that that we continue to mention that as well. Anne Marie, how about you? Do you believe that women are expected to behave differently or are judged differently for our behavior?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question at all. When it comes to your colleagues sitting around the table, there are differences of opinion and that kind of thing. I wouldn't go too far as to say you're the best of buds, but you have a right to be there and a right to be listened to because you've been given that right from the people that you represent. And so we all have that in common when we're sitting around the table. But from the outside, from people judging you and looking at your response, your performance, what you say, what you don't say, it goes on. It could be the inflection in your voice, the shrug of a hand, the rolling of the eyes. I mean, people scrutinize you. You would be just amazed. Marika, I don't have to tell you, you're in the business, so you know that. Right. But it also translates out on how you deal with your family, how you deal in the community, what you say, what you don't say, how you say it. You may be caught up in a moment that you need to spend time with your family. You're judged on that because, men will take precedent over the jobs, whereas women will, what takes precedent for them if they're parents is their children, or if they're a caregiver, the person that they're looking after. Health and well-being of their family is incredibly important, and you're judged by that too. So women are judged by many, many different facets, and many things that they do and how they do it and when they do it. Whereas men are judged differently. Their performance and how they perform is judged differently. So that is a huge obstacle. And I find that the biggest critics of women are women, but also women are hardest on themselves. Mm-hmm. We are our own worst critic.
That's very true. So how do we kind of break through that expectation or those judgments? How do we move past that? Anne Marie, I'll just let you continue with that, and then I'll go to the other panelists.
Well, you need to have a good support network. You're never going to always agree on everything. That's just impossible. People are people. But you need to have people who know you well, and who understand and can give you that confidence that you need, but also the constructive criticism that you need in order to address a situation that perhaps you're not handling well. And that's okay. That's perfect. You need that because that shows your community that you're open to that you understand that you're not perfect, and that you will take any and all, what's the word I'm looking for? Tracy, I have one of your moments. Not just criticism, but we take the good with the bad. And we accept when people and are gracious when people give us a compliment on what we've done for them or how we handle ourselves in situations. But we're also gracious enough to understand that I messed up. I need to fix this. Mm-hmm. And we take ownership of that and we do it.
That's so important. And it's a suggestion actually I give to anyone that I'm helping coach, either for politics or thought leadership, is that it's important for us to be human. We're not, we're not robots. We can't expect ourselves or have everyone else expect us to be perfect all the time. And if we don't admit our mistakes, then we're not human, right? And being, making errors and admitting to those errors is human. And it's really important that constituents and those people you're representing in office understand that, yes, we're human, but we're open to learning, right? And that's, I think, really important. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just pursue that thought a little bit more and come back to what Tracy and Judy were talking about. particularly on social media. That in itself has opened up a Pandora's box for so many women, politicians, but women seem to bear the brunt more than anyone else. And that's where you need, if you're not proficient or don't have the time, you need to have that support mechanism around you that can help you navigate through that stuff and guide you on what you should respond to and what you shouldn't respond to. Because you don't know if the person is living in your community or halfway around the world.
Absolutely.
So you need to have people who have expertise that's well over and above what you have. And that doesn't mean that people don't have expertise. But when you get into a political forum, the way that we are in, even though this is small compared to, you know, if you're a member of parliament or a member of provincial parliament, it's still there. And we have to know how to handle ourselves and how to handle situations that arise through the technologies that allow just even this form to.
I wanted to follow up as well. I know, Tracy, you picked up on the question that came through the chat and mentioned it in your answer a little bit. But Gail also had a question about how do you know who to ask for help? And Judy, I was wondering if you wanted to answer that as well.
So if I need help with an issue, I go to the wisdom, to the older folks in the community, and I have a conversation with them. Because if it's an issue with regards to infrastructure out here in the township, the big thing we deal with in Enniskillen all the time is drainage. Making sure we have good drainage out here for the farming soil. You know what? The folks, the farmers themselves are the ones that have the wisdom. So I tend to turn to them to get advice and help. And I know, Anne-Marie, one thing I noticed too, and I know Tracy has said it too, Tracy, I couldn't agree more, that it takes a term to learn it. You don't really start to excel and grow until you get into that second term. So I know sometimes people think that you're really quiet your first term because, you know what, you're trying to learn it. You tend to excel more and ask questions the second term. It takes time to learn things. And I really believe that that's another key part to earning the community's respect, is that comes by being that advocate or being that community volunteer. It takes time to develop that. So time's another component to help you build your confidence, build your respect, to be able to help your community in office when you're in office.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Judy. We've reached sort of the end of our question period, and we don't have any more questions that have come in from our audience. So I'm going to ask Helen to pop her video back on and introduce herself to start our networking portion of the evening.
Hello.
Hello,
Helen. So we have enjoyed the panel. Lots of great points were brought up tonight, and it's really quite inspiring to hear from three of you who are and have been on council. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. To the rest of you, you can show your pretty faces now and unmute yourself. And we're going to ask you to introduce yourself and to tell us why you joined us tonight. So